The wind crossed her land like a ghost with no name, dragging silver threads of snow behind it, soft as ash from an old prayer. Days here had no count, only color, bone-gray mornings, amber dusk, blue shadows curling through the trees at night. She didn't need a calendar. The cold told her when winter had truly come. She lived where the cottonwoods leaned toward the creek and the earth remembered wild feet. Her cabin stood alone, its walls patched with bark and clay, smoke rising from the chimney in a thin, straight line. A wooden pail rested beneath the eaves, catching meltwater. Every board in that house had been laid by someone long gone. All she did was keep it breathing. Her name was spoken by no one anymore, not even herself. She had carried it like a coal in her mouth once, but it cooled when her people fell, and now it lay in the ashes of memory, silent. She woke before the sun and split firewood while frost still clung to the axe handle. Her hands were leathered with work, cut, scarred, beautiful in a way only the land could understand. She wore a coat too large, sleeves rolled. Her grandmother's beaded collar was stitched into it, the last piece left from another life. She did not wait for visitors. The land did not call them, and she did not welcome what was not born of silence. But that morning they came. For shadows moved along the ridge, horses panting steam into the cold. The girl stood in her yard, one hand resting on the handle of her axe. She didn't step forward, didn't step back, just waited. The riders stopped at the edge of her clearing, near where the fence had half fallen in last spring's wind. Snow clung to their coats. Their hats were rimmed in frost. For a long breath, no one spoke. One of them dismounted first, tall and lean, with laughter in his eyes that didn't match the season. "Well, hell," he said, slapping the frost from his gloves. "Thought this place was abandoned." The girl said nothing. Another, broader-shouldered and quiet, looked to her, then at the smoke rising from the chimney. His gaze was not curious, but careful. "We got caught in the snow," he said. "Didn't expect it this early. Just looking for a bit of shelter. Couple nights. We'll earn it." The third man stayed mounted. The fourth chewed tobacco and stared too long. She didn't speak, just turned and walked into the cabin, leaving the door open behind her. The invitation was neither warm nor cold, it simply was. They stabled their horses in the crooked barn, brushed snow from their coats, and entered the cabin like men unsure whether they were intruding or dreaming. Inside, the space was plain. One bedroll in the corner, a wood-burning stove with a dented kettle hissing low, shelves lined with dried herbs, flint tools, and bundles of animal hides. A deer's antlers hung above the door like a crown of quiet defiance. The girl sat by the fire, her back to them, mending a wool blanket. She did not look up. They found spots on the floor. No one said thank you. It was the laughing one, Ro, who broke the stillness first. "Don't suppose you got any coffee?" She didn't answer. He grinned and nudged the quiet one. "Maybe she don't speak English." The man, Harlan, rubbed his chin. "Maybe she just don't speak to fools." Ro chuckled, but his eyes narrowed. That night, they slept in the barn, at her silent direction. She left a jug of water outside, nothing more. From aloft, Ro muttered, "Crazy girl lives with ghosts. Probably don't even know what year it is." Harlan didn't answer. He lay awake, listening to the wind, thinking of the way her eyes had looked when she turned from them, like a cliff face that had seen too many storms to be afraid of rain. The next morning, Harlan rose early and started chopping wood without being asked. His breath came in clouds. His hands blistered, but he did it anyway. When the girl stepped outside, she paused, watched, then turned away. By evening, there were logs stacked by the cabin wall. She didn't say a word. On the second day, one of the other men tried to open the cabin door without knocking. It creaked halfway before it stopped, met by the weight of her silence behind it. She stood just inside, her hand resting on the haft of a skinning knife. Ro laughed. "Ain't like we're strangers anymore." She stared at him long enough that even the wind seemed to pause. That night, she brought out a pot of stew, left it by the barn door, walked away without waiting. Harlan ate slow, thoughtful. Ro scoffed. "Guess that's her way of flirting." The quiet third man, Levi, finally spoke. "No, that's her way of not letting us starve." It snowed again the next morning, heavy and still. The ranchers tried to dig a trail to the spring, but found it frozen. The girl watched from the porch, wrapped in a buffalo hide cloak. When they returned, teeth chattering, they found water warming in a pot by the barn. Harlan touched the rim. "She's got more kindness than words." Later, while the others argued over whether to leave come sunrise, Harlan took a hammer and nails and began repairing the broken section of her fence. She didn't stop him. Didn't help either. Just watched from the shadows of the cottonwoods. When he finished, she left a piece of cornbread on the fence post. Still warm. That night the wolves came. Their howls laced through the woods, long and mournful, like songs for the dead. The horses stirred. Roe paced inside the barn, pistol drawn. "Y'all sure this place ain't cursed?" he muttered. "First that mute girl, now devils in the trees." Harlan looked toward the cabin window, where a flicker of firelight still glowed. "She ain't mute." "How do you know?" "Just feels like she's waiting for someone worth talking to." On the fourth day, Roe grew restless. Drank too much from the flask he'd hidden in his saddlebag. Started picking fights with the others, throwing rocks at her hounds, mocking her silence. "Bet she don't even know what a man is," he jeered. "Bet she ain't never." She stepped out then. Not fast, not loud, just there. She held a longbow in her hand. Not drawn, not aimed, just present. And the way she stood, still as bone, made even the wind forget how to breathe. Roe froze. She looked at him like one might look at rotting good wood, something to be removed before it spread. Harlan stepped between them, his voice low. "She don't want trouble." Roe laughed, but his voice cracked. "Well, maybe she shouldn't invite it." "She didn't," Harlan said. "We brought it with us." Roe backed off. That night, the cabin door stayed shut. In the morning, the trail to the west had cleared. Roe and the fourth man left without saying goodbye. Only Harlan and Levi remained. The girl stepped outside with a basket of corn husks. She glanced at them once, then went about her work. Levi, with a nod to Harlan, packed his things and rode off by sundown. That left two, a man who didn't speak unless it mattered, and a girl who hadn't spoken in years. They moved through the next day in parallel silence, like animals learning to share a watering hole. He mended her tools. She left salt pork near his pack. He swept the cabin porch without being asked. She planted seeds in the softened earth near the fence line, knowing spring would come. That night, as the moon rose white over the cottonwoods, she brought out 2 cups of tea. Set one beside him. He looked up. Their eyes met. No words passed between them. None were needed. And somewhere far off in the forest, the wolves sang again, but softer this time, as if they too were waiting to see what would bloom from silence. The snow thickened by the hour. By morning, the world had folded itself in white. The trees bowed under its weight. Smoke from a cabin chimney rose slower now, as though time itself moved heavy. The wind knocked softly at the windows, like an old memory asking to be let in. She stood in the doorway with a blanket around her shoulders, watching Harlan mend the last of the chicken coop. His gloves were stiff with cold, but he worked patiently, fingers trembling only when the hammer slipped. She didn't offer help, but she didn't walk away either. He finished and looked up. Their eyes met, and for a breath, neither of them was alone. He had been quiet since the others left. Quieter still since she left tea at his side. There was a rhythm to the silence between them now. Like water running beneath ice, present, invisible, soft in its persistence. That evening, she cooked enough for 2. Smoked rabbit and corn mash. She set one plate down near the fire, the other across the room. When he came in, soaked from snow, he saw it there, steaming gently, like a welcome too shy to speak its name. He didn't ask. He just sat. He ate slow, as if he knew the meal was sacred, not for its flavor, but its offering. And still she did not speak. The next day, the wolves returned, nearer this time. Their howls pealed through the trees like morning bells. Harlan went out with a lantern to check the barn. She followed him, barefoot in the snow. No words between them, only motion, only purpose. Inside, the horses stirred, uneasy. The wind pushed the barn door open with a groan. He closed it gently, and she dropped a wooden bar across it. Together, they walked back to the cabin, 2 shadows merging with the dusk. The days narrowed. Snow climbed the window panes. He built traps for small game. She showed him, without speaking, how to dress a hare and cure its hide. He left his boots by the door now. She brewed tea for 2, without thought. They lived like branches on the same tree, separate but shaped by the same wind. Then came the 7th night. The fire burned low. Harlan sat sharpening his knife, slow and rhythmic. She sat beside the stove, weaving a cord from deer sinew. Outside, something cracked in the woods. Not a branch, not wind, a voice. Harlan stood fast. Reached for the rifle. He kept leaning near the door. She moved quicker, silent as a shadow, blowing out the lantern before he could speak. Darkness swallowed the room. Footsteps outside. Male. Heavy. A voice slurred through the wind. "Ro, still playing house, huh? Didn't think she'd keep a pet." Harlan's jaw tightened. "I come to collect my pride," Ro shouted. "Or whatever's left of it." She moved past Harlan and opened the door herself. Snow whirled around her figure, but she stood steady. Ro was drunk. Face red, hat crooked. The fourth man lingered behind him on horseback, uncertain. Ro stepped forward. "All this time, girl, not a single word for me? You think you're better than us?" His hand twitched toward his coat, and Harlan stepped into the light, rifle raised, not shaking, not shouting. "She told you no," he said, his voice low and final. Ro scoffed. "She never told me anything." "You weren't listening." A long moment passed. The wind howled around them, as though nature itself had drawn a line. Ro spat into the snow. "She's not yours." "She doesn't belong to anyone," Harlan replied. The silence that followed was louder than any bullet. The fourth man turned his horse. Ro stood alone in the storm now, the cold sobering him or humbling him. He backed away, muttering curses that died against the wind. They watched until he vanished between the trees. Inside, the cabin was still dark. She lit the lantern again. Her hands were steady. Harlan placed the rifle down and turned toward her, unsure of the lines now drawn between them. She moved to the cupboard and took out a blanket. Not her own. A spare. She handed it to him. And then her voice, unused for so long, broke through the quiet like morning sunlight through cloud. "You didn't speak for me," she said. "You stood beside me." It wasn't gratitude. It was an invitation. It was truth spoken simply. He looked at her, not like a man waiting to be answered, but like a man finally heard. That night, they ate together with no space between them. The fire crackled low. He told her his name again, softer this time, not as something to be remembered, but as something he offered, like bread. She said hers, like a secret unwrapped slowly in the dark. The wolves did not howl that night. Come morning, the sky cleared. Pale sun broke through cloud. He began to pack his things. She watched from the doorway, a quiet ache behind her eyes. When he stepped outside, boots crunching snow, he looked back once. She was standing there, just as she had that first morning. Strong. Unmoving. But this time the door was open wide. He hesitated. Waited. She didn't ask him to stay. She simply stepped aside. There was no kiss. No promise. Only warmth shared by people who had survived their own winters. Sometimes shelter is not built from wood, not measured by walls or weight. Sometimes it's the silent space where pain is understood and no one tries to fix it. Sometimes is one person handing another a cup of tea without a word. And sometimes is the door you don't close behind you. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more Wild West tales filled with quiet courage, slow-burning love, and timeless truths. Ask ChatGPT.